raisins are kind of weird. I've never had raisins on a pizza before. The Mediterranean, of course, has feta cheese, olives, and that sort of thing. So, and tomato. So I'm anxious to dig in here. I haven't had pizza in a long time, and I got thin crust because I like the thin crust pizza. So that's the Caribbean. It's got shrimp on it too, by the way. Really taste the shrimp. Now this is the fourth pizza video I've made, and I've always gotten pizza from the same place for a variety of reasons. First of all, they're open early. Some places don't open until after 4. These guys are open in the morning. It's kind of nice. Also, the prices are comparable. Got good prices. Let's slide that over a bit. And they have you can get thin, medium, or thick crust pizza. Now remember, back in the 80s, or maybe you won't, maybe you weren't born then, but remember the deep dish pizza. Well, that was good because you could fill your kids up on it. You know, little kids could have like 1 or 2 slices, they were done, you know. It's a lot of dough. That's just it. It was too much dough for me. Got some boiled water. And they got good service. And the thing I really like is they're literally about a 2-minute drive. I'm recording this video on a Sunday. There's no traffic on the road. And they're open 7 days a week, so I drive down the lights, turn right, get in the left lane, turn into the strip mall where they are. Literally a 2-minute drive. That's good pizza. I got a couple large pizzas because, you know, if you get medium or small, you may as well just get a large, right? And then you got leftovers, you can use them for something else. So, I said before, some of the best pizza I ever had was in Costa Rica and Cambodia. I got a picture of that pizza that I had in Cambodia, in Costa Rica. I'll see if I can dig it up. If I can find it, I'll flash it on the screen for you. But it was a very good pizza. I know these raisins seem a bit weird, but I know some people think pineapple is weird on a pizza. I like pineapple on a pizza. The raisins, I can't really taste them. I've seen pizza. My girlfriend Linda said she had pizza with sliced pear on it and different things one time. So. To each their own. So anyways, I'm going to try a piece of the Mediterranean. Maybe next time I'll get a thicker crust. Just for something different. This has more of a smoky flavor. Definitely taste the olives, the feta cheese, that sort of thing. So, as you know, I'm an old guy. Been around a while. And I've said many times before that I bought my first house the same year I got married, which was in 1983. We got married in July of 83, bought our house in October, took possession November 1st of 83. And the neighborhood we bought into is the oldest neighborhood in town. It's where the town originated from. Lots of stately old trees, lots of back alleys, old houses. Our house that we bought That was an old character home, probably built around 1920. So we bought our house and took possession. It was fall. Weather was still sunny but cold. You know, summer was over, winter was coming on. So we weren't outside that much. But we'd get to know our neighbors eventually. I made a video about my neighbor across the street, Jimmy, called Jimmy Ate My Nachos. And another video about Fred and Crystal up the road. So, we moved in. And this one nice beautiful day in November. I'm walking down the corner store now. We had our house in the street, house, and then a back alley, which separated us from the houses on the other side. And so I had to go down the back. I had to go around to the corner store, probably to get cigarettes. My goodness. I quit smoking in '87, by the way. This is good pizza. So, go down the store. Instead of coming back the same way, I decided just to go around and come up on the other side of the alley. As I'm coming down the back alley towards my house, there's a house across the back alley from me, not directly across, but one over. And I see this elderly fellow out there. He's got some snippers and standing by his back gate. And he's kind of snipping up, I think maybe it was blackberries or something, I can't remember. He's kind of cutting stuff up. He's got one of those caps, so I remember that movie, Grubby Old Men, where they got those flaps on their ears. He had a cap kind of like that. And I just briefly talked to him, small talk. And I said, I just bought this house here. And he said, oh yeah, he knew the people that owned it before, Jack and Sheila, an English couple who were very much into gardening. And I could kind of tell that he enjoyed gardening. And I have to admit, when we first moved in, whenever I looked out, I always saw him in his backyard, but I'd never talked to him before. Turns out his name is Ray. So it's fine. So I talked a bit and I went home. So I told my ex about this nice man I'd met. So anyways, never talked to him after that. It wasn't until the following spring in 1984. Walk by, I'd see him and say hi. This one day, it's a beautiful day. Probably late February, early March. Days are getting longer, weather's changing. You can hear the odd lawnmower every once in a while. The world is once again coming alive. So my ex and I are out there in the backyard, looking forward to having our first garden in our house. And we see Ray at the back, so we just waved him, say hi, and we just asked him if he wanted to. Oh, I know, we had a small little fence back then, not like the one we eventually built, but a small fence. You could basically just step over it. So he just came out of his yard, and we went to our back fence, and we just kind of standing there talking by the back alley, talking about gardens. And as it turns out, this guy's an expert on gardening. I mean, he knows every kind of plant and flower, and and every kind of garden pest and weed, and types of sprays you should use, and when you should plant, and how you should rotate, and different types of things in like nutrients for your garden. business owners had this beautiful rose trellis, and they grew a lot of roses. And Ray grew a lot of roses, like red ones and white ones, yellow ones. And in the summer, he would grow dahlias, beautiful dahlias, and he would sell them out in front of his house for about $2. He set up a little stand, sell them for about $2. But he was the type of guy, once we got to know him, we realized that he was such a lovely man. He would, if you had a birthday or something, or a baby or something, he would come over and give you one of his roses or his dahlias, whatever was flowering and looking beautiful at the time. Very thoughtful man. So as time went on, we got to know a bit about him. He was born in 1900 in Ontario. And his parents had a farm. And Ray, basically, him and his siblings worked on the farm, right from day one. He was a farm boy. That's what you did, right? You just helped out. So, he got married when he was about 21 or something. And his wife was about 18. And they got married and started a family. And I think he said they had a house on his parents' property. They had hundreds of acres. Anyways, he helped his dad farm for years. Everything's going good. And then they started having a couple of tough years. Now, Ray had told me that he was too young for World War I, because just as the war was ending, he just turned 18, and he said he was fortunate he didn't have to go to war, but he kind of felt guilty that he did, because so many of his people that he knew and so many relatives and friends had to go, and many didn't come back. So he just missed World War I and was too old for World War II. So anyways, him and his wife were living on the farm. And around the late 20s, I guess Ray was about 27, 28, his dad passed away. Now, like I said, they had a couple of tough years before that. And once the father passed away, a lot of garlic on this one, Ray didn't really want to keep on farming, because he kind of had a premonition that it was going to be, a very, very tough business. And his kids are still very little. I guess they had some kids eventually, but they were quite little at the time. And I think he had a brother that moved off the farm, didn't want to do it anymore. So Ray and his mother decided to sell. So they sold the farm. Ray got a job with the railroad, the CN, Canadian National Railroad. He said the best move they ever made was selling that farm when they did. Because soon after that, the Depression hit, like the Dust Bowl, Dirty 30s, stuff, And there was a time you couldn't give your farms away. He was so glad they sold it. So he got a job at the railroad as on the maintenance crew. So he stayed with the railroad, but he managed to get a job as a porter on a passenger train with the same company. He said it was much easier than maintenance. Basically maintenance, a lot of times you're building railroads, it's a lot of work. And on the passenger train, he was on some small routes at first, and eventually got onto like a cross-Canada route. So he could go clear across Canada, so he'd be gone for, maybe, I don't know, maybe a week or 10 days. And then he'd be home for, 5 or 6 days. Got some nice shrimp on there. But it worked out for him and his wife. She stayed home raising the kids, and he was making good money, good solid living. And he'd be away from home, but he'd be back, like I said, for 5 or 6 days. So, I'm putting a dent in my pizzas. I don't know if you can see that. I'm putting a dent. Oh, maybe you can't see because the dents are down here. Oh. They both look the same. Same amount, I mean. Okay, I'm going back to this one. Back to the Caribbean. So anyways, he's working for the railroad, the railroad, yeah. And at one time, he's going back and forth across Canada. He always liked British Columbia, because when he got out here, he loved the ocean, he loved, the greenery. The weather was much more mild. But one time he brought his wife with him. And he had some time off coming up, so when they were out here in British Columbia, they decided to come out to Vancouver Island for a little holiday, and they fell in love with it. Can't decide which pizza I like the best. They're both good. So, they both found out Vancouver Island. Decided they wanted to live here sometime, but just right then it wasn't really possible. But a couple of years later, Ray had an opportunity to acquire a new skill. I can't remember if he went to school for that, so I'm kind of fuzzy on that, but he became an accountant and like a bookkeeper with the CN Railroad. The CN Railroad. And the job was here in Nanaimo, where I live and where he was when I met him. Now I think that was maybe the late 40s, early 50s. So they moved out here to the island, bought the house that they're in, and he stayed on with the CN Railroad in the capacity of a bookkeeper, accounting. Now I can't remember exactly when, but his wife passed away. He retired in 65. Yeah. He retired in 65 when he was 65 years old. But he kept on. Oh, I remember. Yeah, they moved here in the late 40s, early 50s. He retired in 65. And they both started this kind of like to do income tax for people and small accounting things on the side as part of their retirement for extra income. And Ray's wife never worked. She was always a stay-at-home mom and wife, whatever. And then unfortunately she passed away in the early 70s. So at that point he stopped doing his accounting and all that. And so when we met him, he had been a widower for about 10 years. Now him and his wife both loved gardening. And after she passed away, that's all he had. Now he did have some kids. I saw his son one time. He had a son who lived here in town with his wife. And they helped Ray out a lot. Ray had a good infrastructure of friends. But one time, I looked out my back window and I saw this man, he appeared to be about in his 60s at my age, on a step ladder with a saw, pruning one of Ray's trees. That was Ray's son. And I thought that was kind of funny because I was in my late 20s. I couldn't imagine a man having a son who's in his mid-60s, right? Well, I'm in my mid-60s and my mom is still alive. My mom had a son, my brother, who passed away when he was 73 back in 2018, so she had a son who was 73. So Ray had a lot of friends. He had a good infrastructure of friends and support. He belonged to a Baptist church. His church family was really good to him. They would drive him to doctor's appointments or take him here, take him there. He'd get invited out for dinner a lot. Sunday dinner, whenever, during the week, whatever. He was, very respected. He was a lovely man. And his son's wife would help him a lot too. She'd come over and clean his house, I think, maybe once a week or every 2 weeks. She'd come over and clean his house top to bottom. But when you saw Ray out in the garden, it was kind of funny because he always dressed the same. Always had a cap. Almost always dressed in like a dark green or brown. Always wore long pants, long shirt, like a work shirt. Even in a August heat wave, you dress like that. Never saw him wearing shorts or a t-shirt or nothing. Always dressed the same. One day my ex and I went over to, he wanted to show us something in his garden. And his garden was just immaculate because, he'd be out there every single day. You wonder what he's doing. He was always on his hands and he's weeding and he's weeding. Man, he lived for his garden. But it was just neat as a pin. Beautiful. Everything was flourishing. Didn't matter what he planted. It just flourished because the soil was so good. He rotated properly. He knew all the fertilizers and blah, blah, blah. He wanted to show us something inside his house. I can't remember what it was, but went in his house. It was neat as a pin. Lots of our built-in cabinets with leaded stained glass and wood. Very nice house. And at the end of his hallway, he had this little nook, looked like a little bookshelf where you put a plant or something. It was about a foot and a half tall and a foot wide. And there's an old telephone sitting there, like the kind you know, like with a dial tone, but like a real heavy, clunky one from like the 40s or something, right? And I started walking towards it. I said, "Does that still work?" He goes, "Oh no," he said, "that's been hooked up for years." But he just left it there. When he got a new phone, but he got a new telephone back in the 60s, I guess, or 50s, whatever. But he said it probably still works, but it's just not connected. But he couldn't think of anything else to put there, so he just left the phone where it was. But it looked perfect. Now, Ray could pretty much garden all year. Like you guys planted at least. You plant peas twice. I think you planted winter radishes and stuff like that. I didn't even know about that, but he was very much fixated on his garden. Always had something going on. I never saw him cutting lawn. So I guess his son must have done that, but I never saw him push the lawnmower. But he was a very thin man, not an ounce of fat. I have those transition glasses. I have a pair like that myself, but when he's outside, I always look like he's wearing sunglasses. Made him look kind of cool, actually. Now, right next door to us was a young lady named Claudia. Now, at that time, because I was in my late 20s, my ex was about 4 years younger, mid-20s. I think Claudia was probably around 30, maybe. She taught aerobics, so she was very toned, nice looking. Hair always dyed very dark, like black. Looked like somebody that would tell your fortune or something, Very chatty, very assertive. Always wore shorts in the summer and halter tops or whatever. So one day, like I said, she was our next door neighbor. She's leaning over the fence talking to my ex and I. We were chatting away. I know she kept looking over there like that. Like she was distracted by something. Finally, she just stops in mid-conversation and says, "Ray, I can see you over there." And all of a sudden, Ray steps behind this telephone pole. He'd been stabbed behind this telephone pole in the back alley. He looked so embarrassed. Said, "Oh, I was just waiting for you to finish talking so I could talk to you about something." But he was obviously eavesdropping. So Claudia walked over to talk to him for a couple minutes about gardening. Then she came back and she said, "Now, he had the hots for her." Well, Ray was a very lonely man. He loved people. He loved talking. One time I was on the backyard, somebody walked by and I said, "Hey, how's it going?" And Ray thought I was talking to him. He goes, "Oh, I'm doing pretty good, loved people, and he was lonely. So I'm sure he liked Claudia because Claudia paid attention to him. She had a garden that she needed help with, and her garden was a disaster, but that's beside the point. But I think maybe he did find her to be somewhat attractive. I kind of got that impression when she had a boyfriend living with her who moved out, who was quickly replaced by another one who moved in. And I was talking to Ray, and he said, I see Claudia's boyfriend moved out, but she wasted no time getting another one to move in. I guess she just has to have her man, because she can't be without her man. And he seemed a little bit put out. So Claudia's probably right. Maybe he did kind of have some feelings for her or something. But anyways, human nature. He was such a nice guy. One time Jimmy, I made a video called Jimmy Ate My Nachos. My neighbor across the street, Jimmy, another very lonely guy, bachelor. He came over on this beautiful day. We're all sitting outside, and Ray was there. And when Jimmy saw him, he goes, "Hey, Mr. J, how are you?" He immediately went over and shook his hand. You could just see the respect, you know. Because Ray had a, you know, people respected Ray. He was such a nice man. I think he had quite an interesting life. We tried to talk him into having a cat once as a companion, but he didn't want one. He loved animals, but he didn't want to be, didn't want the responsibility. We had him over for dinner a few times. And, like I said, for a widower, he did have a good support system. Like he was never, I don't think he was never by himself for Christmas or nothing like that. As lonely as he was, he did get invited out a lot. I remember one time going down the store and I saw him going to church. He was coming out of the house and somebody from his church was giving him a ride. And he was wearing a dark suit and one of those narrow ties that my dad used to wear back in the 60s. That was the first and only time I've seen him without a cap. But that style of suit and tie, he probably bought that back in the 60s, and that's what he still wore all these years, right? Because that was probably his only suit, and that's fine, right? Going for another Mediterranean. The other thing about these pizzas that I think is lacking is they need more sauce. There's a pizza place I was buying pizza from as far back as the early 80s. They're still around. And they always have really saucy pizzas, like really juicy and saucy, really good. One secret to making when you have your pizza crust, a good secret is take a little bit of olive oil, spread that around before you put your sauce on. Keeps the whole thing nice and moist and juicy. So, these raisins on here, you can't even tell they're raisins. So anyway, Ray never did remarry or nothing like that. I know he went out to the graveyard a few times a year to put some of his beautiful flowers on his wife's grave. So in the summer of 19, oh, they're coming to get me, folks. I better hide. They're coming to get me. In the summer of 1987. Yeah, summer of 87. There's a wedding in town. And it was the wedding party, I guess. Instead of hiring a caterer, they decided to do the whole thing themselves, which resulted in a mass food poisoning. And it took a few weeks, but they concluded after they investigated that it was potato salad. I can't remember if it was the bride's mother. But this is a very typical story. I've heard this more than once. Different situations where they had the potato salad in the trunk of the car and they drove around all day. Now the reason I thought it might be the bride's mother is because if anyone's going to be driving around doing all kinds of stops and whatever, it'd probably be the bride's mom. But I can't say for sure. But somebody who brought potato salad out in the trunk of their car all day. Which resulted in a lot of people getting sick. Nobody died, but a lot of people got very, very sick. And it was in the newspapers, on the news, that sort of thing. I remember one of my co-workers was kind of saying, a lot of people poo-poo the food industry. They think, well, it's not a big deal. We just catered ourselves, but you do have to take precautions. And we have all these different people bringing stuff in like a potluck type thing. You can't control that, You lose control because you don't know where it's been, who made it, where it came from, blah, blah, blah. What precautions were taken. Temperatures, whatever. So anyways, we hadn't talked to Ray in a while. Nothing unusual. I mean, we didn't talk to the guy every day, but yeah, we'd see him out there, but didn't think nothing of it when we didn't see him. So it was one day we see him, and he comes over and he looks terrible. Oh man. I mean, he was thin as a rake. He probably only weighed about 145 pounds as it was, but he was always a thin guy. But he looked gaunt. And his voice was all raspy. He said he'd been sick. I said, what happened? And he said he went to this wedding. Well, it turns out it was that same wedding. And he got food poisoning. I guess he came home from the wedding a little bit early because he's an old guy. He didn't really like dancing. He was home by about 9 or 10 o'clock. Goes to bed at about midnight or 1 in the morning. Gets up and he's just sicker than a dog. Doesn't even make it to the bathroom. Throws up all over the hallway. Just super sick. Phones his son, and the son's wife calls an ambulance. Take him to the hospital. the only one at the wedding party that was hospitalized. They kept him for a couple of days. Now that was sometime in the summer of '87. Could have been June, July, August. Can't remember. During the hot weather. But he got very sick. And like I said, sometimes when a person is really gaunt looking, their teeth look too big for their mouth. That's kind of how he looked. I mean, he was thin before, but not unhealthy thin, just thin. Now he looked gaunt. And his color wasn't the same, but his voice, I noticed, was really raspy. It wasn't the same. Almost like he just had throat surgery or something. I thought, wow. After that food poisoning, he was never the same. Never looked good, never sounded the same. Never saw him on his garden that much. He even said that he didn't feel that good anymore. I think that took a lot out of him. Because he passed away that fall. He was 87 when he passed away. Now, that's a good age for a man to live to, but I often wonder, had he not got that food poisoning, how much longer would he have lived? Because he was so spry and healthy, and he walked, when he walked pretty quick, and he just slowed right down after that. It was never the same. So the day of his funeral, can't remember exactly when it was. It was in the fall sometime. I remember I got off work, and the Baptist church that he attended was just down the street and to the left of where I worked. So back in those days, I was working 6 to 2. I got off at 2 o'clock. I think his funeral started at 1. And I drove by the church. I guess it was just finishing. There's all kinds of people outside, lots of cars. It was packed, absolutely packed. He was obviously a very well-respected and very much-loved man. I've eaten half of this pizza right here. I've eaten half of this one. I got one more piece out of that one to make it a half. But he was a very thoughtful man. I remember when our son was born in '85. He brought us a bunch of roses and flowers. And I think that's when I first not seen his dahlias before that, but I remember he brought some dahlias too, I think. He grew the most amazing dahlias. I often wished I could talk to him now. Because when he died, I was only 30 years old. As a senior citizen myself, I can relate more to somebody his age. I would ask different questions. I would ask more questions. I only know what I do know about him. I only know that because of he loved to and I don't know. But we got a lot to thank him for, my ex and I, because he taught us so much about gardening and stuff like that. We learned so much. I kind of miss the old neighborhood sometimes. It was so nice. You know, Jimmy across the street, Ray across the alley. My neighbors Hans and Hilda next door. So many people passed away or moved on. You know, some got divorced and whatever. You know, including my ex and I. But the old house was so nice. The old neighborhood. You know, big gardens and back alleys, big stately trees, you know. Big oak trees, elm trees, you know. Big fir trees and, you know, arbutus trees. Trees that have been there for years, you know, maybe 100 years, you know, they're huge. But, I could have one more piece, but I don't want to make myself sick. That was a lot of food. This pizza is completely half gone, and this one's almost half gone. It's got one more piece, it would be half gone. So it's basically like I almost ate a whole pizza. No, that's only because it's a thin crust of that word. Medium crust or a thick crust, I couldn't do it. You know, thick crust, I'm good for 3 or 4 pieces. But, yeah, Ray was quite a man. An interesting note. When he passed away, it took a while to settle his estate and all that. And his house came up for sale. And my mom bought it. In 88, she bought it in very early, January of 88, I think. She bought it. And she paid $74,000 for it. And the reason she bought it was my sister had 2 kids and she was going back to school. And she had like a weekend husband who was kind of in and out. You know, he wasn't really committed, you know. And she was struggling, so they bought a house so that she could have a place to live and go back to school and raise her kids. And then, and she was able to do that. She got a degree and then bought her own house. And then mom and dad subsequently sold that house after about 5 or 6 years. I made a video recently when we did a road trip back to Saskatchewan and we got beaver fever, or my son and I did. Well, my sister at that time was living across the alley in Ray's old house. And, yeah, and that was in 93, so she'd been living there from 88 till 93. Maybe she lived there a bit longer. You know what? Now that I think about it, she lived there for almost 10 years. Because she bought her own place in 97, I think. Or 96, 95. Anyway, she lived there about at least 8 years anyway. But whatever. But interesting, my mom paid $74 for the house. Sold it for a bit more. The market hadn't moved that much. She made a few $1,000s on it. I think mom and dad sold it for about, maybe 80 something. They made maybe 10 grand on it. But what was interesting was Ray bought that house back in the 40s or 50s. do some videos where I'm not eating and just talking. Look, I'll mix it up a bit, but the stories are not going anywhere. I'm going to keep all my stories. Like, I got more stories to come, believe me. More chicken videos coming, more pizza, more Chinese food. Yep, it's all coming. More cookie videos. So you take care, my friends. You want a shout out, hit me up. I'll give you one, okay? In the meantime, keep those comments coming. I read them all, okay? May take me a while to respond, but I'll get to you eventually. You take care. Look after yourselves. Thanks for tuning in. Stay amazing out there in the land of awesome.